Welcome to European Railway Dampfspektakel 2014. In this special programme, we travel to Germany to witness mainline steam in action during the spring of 2014. A major steam event took place centred on the town of Neustadt Weinstrasse between the 28th of May and the 1st of June 2014. It included the Pfalz, Odenwald and Mid-Upper Rhine regions and celebrated 25 years of the Rhine-Neckar Transport Association, as well as 20 years since the introduction of Rheinland-Pfalz regular clock-faced rail and local transport timetables. Our filming took place to the west of Mannheim, in the lower part of the Rheinland-Pfalz region. The main events took place from the 29th of May, where steam trains could be seen working over various parts of the region. Most of the principal main lines and secondary routes in the area saw the use of steam locomotives on a number of special services. Although we didn't cover the first day, it was extremely limited in the use of steam and involved the operation of a single Class 52 locomotive on a run down to Landau and thence in a westerly direction, where it made several trips on the branch down to Bundenthal. The first day to really involve steam was on Thursday the 29th of May, when a number of locomotives were used on services to the northeast of Neustadt and covered the branches between Worms and Alzey, as well as the line east to Bensheim. A mainline run also took place to Darmstadt, with regular trips south to and from Weinsheim. In addition, trains also ran to Heilbronn out to the southeast, and from Heidelberg down the branch to Sinsheim. We joined the action on day 2 at Neustadt station on Thursday the 29th of May 2014. During the event, the depot to the east of the station provided the base for the visiting locomotives, where we see some of them being prepared for their day's work. The time is 6:30 in the morning, and the first of the rail enthusiasts were beginning to appear on the platform ends in order to watch the first departure of the day behind 01 Pacific No. 118, which was the designated power for the 6:35 mainline run to Darmstadt. The train would then cover a series of return workings to Weinsheim. It had originally been intended to use Class 38, number 383199, in top and tail mode once the train had reached Darmstadt-Kranichstein, but in the end the Class 38 was unavailable and the 01 worked alone. The next train to appear from the carriage sidings to the east of the station was operated by Class 52 number 8134, with sister locomotive number 524867 on the rear. The train was then scheduled to make a number of runs on the line from Worms to Alzey. Next out of the sidings were 41360 and 41018, with stock for the 0717 departure for Bensheim. During the day the train would make a series of return runs between there and Worms. As the 41s arrive in the platform, number 524867 departs with the 0655 to Alzey, a train which we will see again shortly. Next we move to the north of Mannheim, where we catch the 52s heading north towards Worms. Next we sample a number of locations on the Alzey branch before visiting a Rhine river bridge at Worms, and then moving southeast to look at workings at Neckargemünd and then south to Heddesheim on the line down to Mannheim. We just managed to catch up with the Class 52s as they approached Frankenthal. After a change of direction at Worms, the train left as the 0809 departure for Alzey. Soon it would enter wine-producing territory and is seen on the climb from the station at Niederpforzheim-Dalzheim up to the village of Gundersheim. This time number 528134 leads the formation. The train is seen once more on the undulating straight track just north of Eppelsheim, not far from where it had a 9-minute layover. The traffic noise comes from the nearby A61 motorway. We now move to the River Rhine and the route east of Worms towards Hofheim, where the route to Bensheim diverges. The Class 41s work services on this line for most of the day. Having made their first visit to Bensheim, the 41s are seen returning to Worms, crossing over the bridge in a westbound direction at just before 10:20. The train would spend 12 minutes at Worms before returning to Bensheim. In the meantime, whilst we waited for the train to return, there was plenty to be seen on the river itself. Meanwhile, number 527596 had worked east from Neustadt with the 0809 service to Sinsheim. Here we see the 1124 return working from Sinsheim to Heidelberg, arriving at the station at Neckargemünd in the picturesque Neckar Valley. Also working along this beautiful river valley was 01 Pacific number 01202, with the 1111 from Neustadt to Heilbronn and return. This train should have been worked by sister locomotive number 01150, but this was unavailable due to mechanical failure. 1 hour and 20 minutes later, and 527596 heads east with the 1338 from Heidelberg to Sinsheim. The 52 was one of 3 of the class working during the event, and was the only one not to carry the familiar smoke deflectors on the front of the boiler. This locomotive was built by the Florisdorf Locomotive Works in Vienna in 1944. It was used in Austria up until the end of its active service in 1977. In 1978, the locomotive was taken by the Eisenbahnfreunde Zollernbahn, first to Tübingen and then in 2007 to Rottweil. The locomotive has been in regular use since 1989. We now move to a number of locations on the line to the south of Weinsheim. The first is not far from Heddesheim, as 01118 heads south, with the 1510 from Darmstadt to Neustadt. The 01 is the only one of its type to have remained in service since it was built in 1934 by Krupp in Essen. After the war, the locomotive was in use with East German Railways until it was sold on the 5th of November 1981 to the Frankfurt Historical Railway, where it remains today. Number 527596 worked north after travelling to Sinsheim in order to face the right direction for the run to Neustadt. Here it approaches the camera just north of Leidenburg, on its way to Weinsheim, where it will reverse. Not far from Mannheim Friedrichsfeld station is the Historic Railway Museum of Mannheim. Here some of the rolling stock can be seen on display, much of which is older diesel locomotive classes, including many small shunters. Number 7596 heads west towards Mannheim. 01202 is seen returning from its trip to Heilbronn as it rushes past the museum and onwards towards Mannheim. Finally, we are situated just west of Schifferstadt, around 26 kilometres from Neustadt, as we see 01202 once more, powering away from the town with the 1625 Heilbronn to Neustadt. The main A61 motorway can be seen crossing the line in front of us. The 01 had overtaken the Class 52 at Mannheim. Here number 7596 increases its speed as it heads towards the camera just 10 minutes later. By around 7:45 in the evening, all participating locomotives had returned to the shed at Neustadt, ready for a well-earned rest. This is the scene taken from the road adjacent to Neustadt station. Day 3 was less intensive in terms of steam-hauled services, with a single mainline run from Neustadt down to Karlsruhe, as well as 2 separate services running to and from Heilbronn. The first train of the day was hauled by 01 Pacific number 118, as the 0915 to Karlsruhe and return via Heidelberg. The second was a special postal train to Heilbronn, headed by Class 41 number 41360. Followed by a late morning run also to Heilbronn with 01202. The first of the 3 trains, hauled by 01118, reverses out of the carriage sidings and past the depot and on towards the station. enthusiasts and onlookers began to gather at most of the available vantage points as departure time for the 01 drew closer. Next, it was time for the stock for the 0940 special charter post train to Heilbronn to arrive from the carriage sidings. It's worth noting that anyone caught trespassing to get their photo were quickly moved on by the railway police. Take this scene for instance. Number 58311 was one of the standby locos provided for the event. Here it moves around the locomotive depot. Meanwhile, 01118 was heading south towards Karlsruhe on the main line from Mannheim. Here the train is seen shortly after departing Graben-Neudorf, just 20 kilometres north of its destination. Every available vantage point was being used, including on the top of electric control cubicles. After a layover in Karlsruhe, number 118 heads north about 10 minutes after departure, seen here running north towards Bruchsal. The train had a 10-minute stopover at Bruchsal, allowing the many chasers time to overtake once more. Here the train is seen shortly after leaving Bruchsal station. Next stop will be Heidelberg. We return north once more, and we are at Buhl-Igelheim station, just to the west of Schifferstadt, as 41360 comes into view with the 1720 from Heilbronn. The loco had been swapped with 01202, which had transferred to working the special post train, which was following along behind just 10 minutes later. And when the Pacific did come into view, what about this for a treat? The train was being paced by an ICE unit all the way to Neustadt, a superb sight for those on board the trains. Later that evening, the shed at Neustadt was opened up to enthusiasts and participants for a night shoot, where all locomotives would be positioned in front of the main depot buildings. This event was well attended, and many photographers had bagged their positions well in advance.
Hat die Fototasche wieder hinten im Lichtblickfeld haben, gefällt mir nicht da hinten. Sag mal, lass mal mit dem Band lang gehen. Lass mal abstellen.
Two locomotives had yet to complete their servicing and join the lineup. The first was number 41360, where it joins its sister, number 018, already in position. Meanwhile, this most unusual vehicle was driven onto the turntable, ready for use moving locomotives later on in the evening. The last steam locomotive to arrive was 01202, and it would be almost dark before it took up its position. First, however, it had to be coaled and watered, as well as taken for a quick spin on the turntable. Eventually, the lineup was complete, and this impressive event at the depot finally drew to a close. Day 4 had a more intensive service with all available locomotives and stock being utilised. Today's turns ran on lines to the north, on the branch up to Bad Dürkheim, to the northwest with services to Alzey and Bad Kreuznach, a circular run with an 01 Pacific via Landau, Pirmasens and north back to Neustadt, 2 runs to and from Karlsruhe to the south, and a return stopping service to and from Landau. We begin at Neustadt, just west of the station, where we witness the first train of the day departing, before moving to a point just north of Neustadt on the Bad Dürkheim branch, before moving south to 2 locations on the route to Landau. At Neustadt we see the first train of the day, which was the 0647 departure for Alzey, powered by 52-4867. Next we move on to the Bad Dürkheim branch just north of the town to await the arrival of the 0707 departure from Neustadt. The train should have originally been top and tailed by both of the Class 41s, but only number 360 powered the train on this occasion. Number 41 360 was originally delivered on the 18th of July 1940 and became part of a fleet of 366 locomotives, which were all built between 1935 and 1941. The locomotive underwent complete restoration between 1977 and 1985, when it appeared at Nuremberg as part of the 150th anniversary of German Federal Railways. We now move around 10 kilometres to the south of Neustadt, close to the town of Heddesheim, as 01 Pacific number 202 heads south towards the camera at the head of the 0827 circular trip via Pirmasens. Originally it had been planned to use both 01202 and 01150 on this train, but in the end number 202 handled the train alone due to the ongoing mechanical problems with 01150. Just 20 minutes later, and the same train is seen leaving Landau. Ten minutes behind number 202 was the other 01, number 118, which was working the 0851 departure from Neustadt, this being the first of two runs to and from Karlsruhe. We followed 01202 to Pirmasens Nord, and once more to the east of Hochspeyer on its return to Neustadt. We also stop off at Frankenstein before moving north to view some more steam specials at Enkenbach. As mentioned, we caught up with number 202 again as it enters the station here at Pirmasens Nord. A 12-minute layover allowed those on board the train to get some photographs. Note the array of semaphore signals still in operation here. We managed to get in front of the train once again, this time just a few kilometres to the east of Höchstspeier, not far from Franz-Ossenweg tunnel. We couldn't resist calling into Frankenstein station, just a few kilometres further east, especially with this monster, in the shape of number 524867, about to pass through. "10 kilometres to the north, and we are at the station at Enkenbach, as we await the arrival of number 524867 once more. The 52 had travelled to Höchstspeier, which included a run round, so now the loco was leading tender first, with the 1306 from Höchstspeier to Alzey. Number 4867 entered service on the 10th of July 1943 and was quickly put to work operating freight trains in Austria until 1978. It was eventually rescued in 1980 and bought by the historic Eisenbahn Frankfurt, who maintain it in its current working order. Another southbound steam working was due in 15 minutes' time. On this occasion the locomotive involved was number 527596, which is seen arriving hauling the 1140 from Bad Kreuznach to Höchstspeier, a run that will have taken just over 2 hours. Within 35 minutes, the Class 52 had returned from Hochspeyer, with its working north back to Bad Kreuznach. It was time to catch up with the 01 Pacific number 202 once more, as it made its way south on the line from Kaiserslautern to Pirmasens Nord, before it swung eastwards and on to Landau. First we see the train at Schop, then at Pirmasens Nord, then onwards to Landau, where it was one of two northbound steam departures. We then travel to Ebersheim before we complete our day back at Neustadt. This is the station at Schop, where number 01202 had a 7-minute pathing stop. Time would allow us to get in front of her again, this time at the south end of Pirmasens Nord station. After an 8-minute pathing stop, the 01 restarts its journey bound for Landau. The time was exactly 20 to 4. This is the scene at Landau, viewed from the road overbridge just north of the station. Number 528134 was today working shuttle trains between here and Lambrecht, and is seen running around its train. O1202 had now arrived, and was about to depart north on the last leg of its journey back to Neustadt. This was followed 25 minutes later by the departure of the Class 52. This is the scene at Heddesheim as 528134 heads south on the last of the day's trips to and from Landau. Arriving back at Neustadt at 8:15, it would be the final steam working of the day. As the evening sun drops low in the sky, number 8134 enters Neustadt with the last working up from Landau. In order to take the train back into the carriage sidings, number 58311 was used. 58311 dates from 1921. Although known as a Class 58, the type were also referred to as Prussian G12. A total of 1,168 G12s were built between 1917 and 1921. Sunday was the final day of steam operations, and it would follow a similar pattern to the previous day's events, with services north to Bad Dürkheim, northwest up to Alzey and on to Bad Kreuznach, another circular tour via Pirmasens Nord, 2 return trips to Karlsruhe, and for the first time a series of journeys to and from Germersheim. we begin at Neustadt, and 2 locations either side of the station. The first is in the west, next to the entrance of the town's railway museum, where number 18505 looks on, probably wishing it was playing a part in all of the action. As the photographers gathered, it was almost departure time for number 524867, with the 0647 to Alzey. At the other end of the station, the stock for the Bensheim working was being reversed by number 528134. Standing next to the Class 52 is number 41018 on the 0708 departure for Bad Dürkheim. It was organised that the 52 and the 41 would stage a joint departure to provide a superb steam spectacle. We follow the Class 41 as it makes its way along the Bad Dürkheim branch, with a scene at Wackenheim and then at the terminus at Bad Dürkheim itself. This is Wackenheim. After arrival at Bad Dürkheim, 41018 was uncoupled from its train for the run-round manoeuvre. The train had a booked layover time of 1 hour and 14 minutes before it would set off at 08:51 for the run down to Neustadt. There would be 5 return workings scheduled to run throughout the day. We now move northwest and to the line that runs between Enkenbach and Alzey and onwards to Bad Kreuznach. Due to mechanical problems which saw the rostered locomotive number 527596 redeployed to other services, number 41360 was used instead on the runs up to Bad Kreuznach. Here it heads north towards Bayerfeld-Stockweiler. The train was by now running an hour late, and a decision was made to recoup some of the lost time by terminating the train here at Alzey, cutting out the Bad Kreuznach leg. By curtailing its run, the train could then regain its correct timings for the southbound run, where it was scheduled to leave for Höchstspeier at 12:54. Attention now turns to the vantage point just south of the 284-metre long Alzey tunnel, where some early arrivals were engaged in a little garden maintenance work. But before long the vantage point had been completely overwhelmed by photographers. The substitution of the Class 52 by the oil-fired Class 41 really paid dividends for the photographers, who were treated to a superb sight as the train left the tunnel. Smoke was still coming out of the tunnel mouth a good 10 minutes after the train had passed through. This is Winnweiler as 524867 heads north with the 1306 Höchstspeier to Alzey. The same locomotive heads south through Munchweiler. Number 41360 has paused here at Enkenbach whilst in charge of the 1406 from Höchspeyer to Bad Kreuznach. We begin to move south once again now, as we stop off near Frankenstein, then Musbach on the Bad Dürkheim branch, before heading down to Germersheim. We begin near Frankenstein, as 01118 thunders west with a 1419 from Neustadt on a round trip via Pirmasens Nord. The previous day, this train had employed 01202. At Musbach, the final run up to Bad Dürkheim had the Class 41 substituted by preserved diesel number V100-2299. On the rear was Class 58 number 311. Number 528134 had been employed on a number of shuttles between Schifferstadt, Lambrecht and Germersheim. Here the loco is on its last train of the day, as it departs Germersheim with the 1655 to Neustadt. We now return to Neustadt and the closing few scenes of the event. On the turntable we see 524867 after its arrival with the last train from Alzey. Next to return to the depot was number 58311, seen on the head shunt in front of the main turntable. The event had been a huge success with very few breakdowns involving the locomotives that were rostered, for what was often a very intensive day's work. In the end, it was difficult to judge what was a breakdown and what was just a change of locomotive diagram, but it was probably non-availabilities that dictated the course of events on the last day. Number 41360 had stood in for one of the day's casualties, number 01202, which subsequently had its services worked by 527596. Here the Class 41 returns its train to the nearby sidings. "527596 returns with the slightly delayed 1719 from Karlsruhe. Number 897159, which is based at the Neustadt Railway Museum, was used for some of the empty stock workings. Here it enters the station to take number 527596 and its stock back to the carriage sidings. Inevitably, some breakdowns did occur, including to one of the stars of the show, the beautifully restored 01150, which was severely damaged in the Nuremberg depot fire on the 17th of October 2005. The locomotive was initially earmarked for a cosmetic restoration, but a donation initiated by its last driver, Olaf Teubat, raised nearly €1 million, and the locomotive was fully restored back to operational condition between 2011 and 2012. The locomotive spent most of the event in light steam, where on the last day it was star attraction at the town's railway museum. Here it heads back to the depot. 528134 is seen arriving with its train from Germersheim as the day's steam action drew to a close. The final steam movement of the event was a combination of steam and diesel traction, as number 332114 hauls number 528134 back to the sidings. Whether we will see such an event again remains to be seen, as the financial and insurance costs needed to stage such an intensive and wide-ranging steam spectacle will inevitably bear down on the organisers. Let's hope a way forward is found, and that we can look forward to a similar event being staged in the years to come. In the meantime, we would like to thank you for watching Dampfspektakel 2014.